Welcome everyone to the first of our FAD seminar series for 2021. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Ngunnawal people on whose lands the University of Canberra is located, and to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Thank you to those of you who are here in the room today, and thank you to those of you who are joining us remotely. I'm Kerry McCallum, the Director of the News and Media Research Centre, and just by way of introduction, this year FAD is having a weekly seminar series, and it will be hosted by different parts of the faculty. So today's seminar is being hosted by the News and Media Research Centre, and we have two presenters. We have Catherine Jeffery and Susan Atkinson. And Catherine and Susan, we call her Cat. You'll hear that in the questions because everyone will just refer to her as Cat, and probably Sue. So Cat and Sue are members of a team that includes myself and Yunmo Sang, who's also here today, that's been funded by the Office of the E-Safety Commissioner to run a research project called Safe Online Together. I won't tell you too much about the project because Kat and Sue will introduce the project today, but I will introduce our speakers. Catherine Jeffery is a lecturer in communication and media at the University of Canberra. Her research examines parental anxieties and perspectives regarding their children's digital media use. And she used to work in the cyber security and regulation sector. So well prepared for this. And Sue Atkinson is a senior strategic communication consultant and long-term federal public servant. She's currently in her Masters of Strategic Communication at UC and works here as a research associate. So I'll hand over to our two presenters today.
Thank you, Kerry. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. Okay, so let's get into it, I think. How do I change slides? Excellent start. Oh, there we are. Okay, all good. Okay, so the Online Safety Grants Program was announced in 2019. And the first round of funding opened in the first half of 2020. So the grants are between $80,000 and $1 million, and they're available to non-government organisations that deliver online safety education to children, young people in their communities, or training to those who work with them. So there's total funding pool of $9 million over 4 years, and we were successful in getting not 9 million, that would have been awesome, wouldn't it? $118,000 for our project in the first round of funding, and the second round of funding is going to open up soon. So there were 8 successful grantees of which we were one, and there were 115 applications. So it was, you know, according to the E-Safety Commissioner, she said it was like really oversubscribed. They got a lot more than they were expecting. So we were the only university-led project that was successful in this round, but we're partnering with 2 community services organisations to deliver this project, and I think that was probably really critical to our success. So the actual project team has grown substantially, and Sue's going to talk about that a little bit later. So as a result, we now have a really strong project team which draws on a wide range of expertise across a number of different areas, including education and community services. Is everyone online muted? Because we can just hear a little bit of noise at this end. So if everyone could just, that sounds better. Thank you. So as I said, there were 7 other successful grant teams and a whole range of projects as well. I won't go through them all, but the Alana and Madeline Foundation is one that is actually just worth noting because their project is actually collaborating with academics from Swinburne University, including Kath Albury and maybe Anthony McCosker, who are academics that are probably known to some people in this room. And they got, I think, almost $750,000 to deliver educational resources and targeted interventions to reduce technology-facilitated harm of a sexualised nature perpetrated by males aged 15 to 17. And the Endeavour Foundation works with people with an intellectual disability, and there's Indigenous communities as well, and all sorts of different areas and interests that were represented. So what are we doing? So our project, which is called Safe Online Together, it's a pilot project that aims to work with young people and their families to promote intergenerational understanding of digital media use and reduce family conflict around digital media in the home. The objective stems from research, including my own, mostly my PhD research, which involved interviews and focus groups with parents of teenagers. And that research has found that parents attempting to restrict or mediate their children's use of media at home often results in conflict and resistance from children. So parents feel responsible for managing their children's media use to reduce risks, but teenagers increasingly rely on digital media in all aspects of their lives, including, of course, to complete their schoolwork, to connect with friends and family, and also for entertainment. So this often results in an impasse where parents try to manage or restrict their children's media use to minimise risk, but in many cases, their kids aren't having a bar of it, or they might just sort of go behind their parents' back. So our goal is to facilitate mutual understanding between parents and their children. We want parents to understand the importance of digital media in the lives of young people, and also to understand the various benefits of it as well. We also want young people to understand some of the risks around digital media and try and gain an appreciation of their parents' concerns and why their parents are concerned. Through this mutual understanding, we hope that families are empowered to work together to minimise the risks while also maximising the opportunities. So we're clearly differentiating our project from most of the online safety programs that currently operate, such as the AFP's Think You Know program. And the Think You Know program provides presentations to schools and parents about online safety. That Think You Know program, which is similar to other programs that operate throughout the country, tends to be very risk focused, and it typically adopts a deficit approach to communication, whereby it's assumed that parents and young people aren't aware of online risk, and that if they're made aware of those risks, then somehow parents and young people will just address them. But the research indicates that parents and young people are, for the most part, quite risk aware, but it's the actually managing and negotiating device use in the home, which is where difficulties arise within families. So these project objectives are grounded in empirical research, including, as I said, my own PhD research, which had focused on understanding parental anxieties and perspectives. So some of these key empirical insights include that, of course, parents are ultimately responsibilised for managing their children's use of digital media, but their children are not always amenable to having their use monitored or restricted or regulated. Parents attempt to regulate and guide their children's use of media, and that's known as parental mediation. We're seeing a growing body, quite a large body of research looking at parental mediation and parental mediation theory. And parental mediation captures how parents manage their children's media use. It extends the role of parents beyond imposing restrictions, known as restrictive mediation, to also encompassing conversational strategies, known as enabling or active mediation. As Sonia Livingston and Alicia Blum-Ross note, cyber safety resources tend to focus on risk with very little acknowledgement of the opportunities. They note that many of the resources aimed at minimising risk are actually sort of disciplinary in tone, and they leave parents feeling burdened and judged. So parents also have a role not just in reducing online risk for their children, but also guiding them to benefit from the potential of digital technologies, while also building their children's resilience to manage online risk. Additionally, as I've already noted, much of the cyber safety resources and programs draw tacit distinctions between risk and opportunities, but this distinction is not always clear. Parents that I interviewed as part of my research noted that some issues like online conflict and drama, which is typically conceptualised as cyberbullying and therefore a risk to be mitigated, can actually provide important development opportunities for their children as it helps them to build resilience and manage peer conflict. So the challenge for parents and children then is actually balancing the risks and the opportunities of digital media. This is, of course, easier said than done because parents face all sorts of challenges in mediating their children's media use. These include, of course, the size and the portability of mobile devices, the lack of transparency around what young people are doing on them, and of course, young people's legitimate desire for privacy and autonomy. The negotiation of digital media within families can produce qualitative changes in family functioning, disrupt hierarchies of expertise, and also shape family dynamics. Mediation of young people's technology is difficult. It's not so simple as just simply taking away a device or switching off the modem. There's typically a lack of understanding between parents and their children, and a lack of appreciation of each other's points of view, and this often results in family conflict. Restrictive mediation, whereby rules are imposed and laws are laid down about acceptable media use, are actually more likely to result in family conflict, and especially in families with older children. However, more enabling forms of mediation, which involves dialogue between parents and their children and sharing of online experiences, is generally considered to be the more successful approach, as it can prevent online risk and harm, but also facilitate discussion and knowledge sharing between parents and their children. So in short, the more parents use enabling mediation, the more their children initiated discussion about their internet use or asked for advice or help. And finally, contemporary Western families are increasingly democratic. Rules and practices are negotiated with children. There are some cultural differences here, I'm speaking quite generally, rather than parents, in all cases, just imposing sort of top-down authoritarian kind of rules, and then policing their children's online activities. This means that a positive style of parenting, where children are involved in decisions which affect them, are actually more likely to be effective. As Blumross and Livingston note, strategies that involve children and young people directly in discussion about rules and family norms and that feel fair to everyone tend to have the most buy-in from children and are more likely to be followed. So the key point there is that these rules should be negotiated as a family. Okay, so that's the empirical basis of the project, but the project team is actually quite broad and diverse and extends beyond just the kind of subject matter expertise here. We're actually bringing in skills and experience from our community services organisations and also more broadly. But the team here at UC, as Kerry said in the beginning, is me, obviously, Kerry McCallum, Yunmo Sang and Sue. We also have experienced project officers from 2 local community services organisations. So this was a consortia application where we're the lead organisation, but our 2 community services partners are really critical to this project. Okay. So Community Services One is a community services organisation whose mission is to provide services that enhance quality of life. This project sits within their Wellbeing Hub, which was launched last year. And the Wellbeing Hub aims to support children, young people and their families to enjoy physical and mental health, have strong social connections, participate in their communities and feel safe. Our second partner is Capital Region Community Services, it was formerly Belconnen Community Services. They provide a wide range of high quality, integrated and inclusive programs and services to young people and families throughout the ACT. So this partnership with the community services organisations is really critical to the success of this project for two key reasons. First, the community services organisations have deep knowledge and understanding of the communities that they are serving. Their experience and knowledge of the needs of the families in the region will complement our research expertise so that we can ensure that we're developing a program which is not only empirically supported, but which also meets the needs of the communities that we're serving. Also, these organisations have existing outreach pathways with these communities in the region, and we're going to be leveraging those in order to deliver this project. So what are we going to do? So there are several key elements to this project. The first are school presentations. And keep in mind, this is just a pilot project. So we're keeping it reasonably small. And hopefully if it's successful, it can be kind of ramped up and rolled out more broadly. But we've already contacted 6 schools throughout the region who are actually really keen to be involved in the project. We're in the early stages of developing the content for those school presentations, but they will differ from those traditional cyber safety presentations in that they're not going to just focus on the risks, because school children get all of the cyber safety risk focused stuff already, but instead we're going to address issues related to everyday media use and helping young people to balance the risks and the opportunities of digital media. So the broad focus here will be on digital citizenship, and we'll look at issues such as balanced media use and well-being, digital footprints, respect for online relationships and communication, privacy, and critical media literacy. And we'll also use those school presentations as a way of recruiting families to participate in the workshops, which is really the key component of this project, the family workshops. And I'll talk about those in a moment. So another key component is that we're going to train young people aged between 18 and 25 to help us to facilitate the workshops and the school presentations. And we're doing this to avoid that typical top-down, authoritative, risk-focused cyber safety education, which is usually delivered to young people and also their parents. In using young people, we're hoping to help bridge that gap, that generational gap, between young people and their parents. And Sue's going to talk about that a bit more in just a moment. I think the key component of this project really is the family workshops. The purpose of these workshops is to facilitate and guide discussion between family members to promote intergenerational understanding, but also help families to balance the risks and opportunities of media to reduce conflict around media use. So we've structured the workshops in such a way so that they address those key issues that I talked about that came from the research. Via these workshops, we want to challenge the perception of young people as vulnerable risk takers in online spaces, as well as perceptions of their parents as being clueless when it comes to technology. We want to encourage young people to share knowledge about managing their online presence with their families. And in some cases, this will involve helping families to develop some tailored protocols around media use in their homes. We hope that this process will empower parents to manage their families' online behaviours and practices. So we obviously want to generate research insights from these workshops, but we want to do it in a way where it doesn't compromise our key objective, which is around helping families negotiate media use. So for that reason, we're not going to be recording the workshops using video cameras or whatever, but instead we've developed several activities that utilise some more innovative social research methods that will generate data that we can then take away from the workshops and which will then inform ongoing research in this area. So I'll talk about that in just a moment, but basically participants will record various responses on paper, like post-it notes and so on, and we'll gather up all of these materials. So for example, in the first activity, we're going to ask the young people in the room to write down all of the ways that they use their mobile devices, the things that they love about technology, and also write down the things that they think their parents are worried about. The parents in the room will list all of the ways that they use their mobile devices and their major concerns about their children's technology use and why. And we hope that this activity helps to demystify children's use of and love of technology, and that parents can begin to understand the value of digital media to their children. In turn, we hope that then children can gain an appreciation and an understanding of their parents' concerns. The second activity asks participants in the room to complete a story stem related to a potential online risk. So basically, participants will complete the story demonstrating what they would do in a particular situation. These scenarios will cover a range of issues such as respectful online behaviours and relationships, unwanted contact, sending nudes or whatever. We'll have a whole bunch of them. The ones that we choose for that second activity might be informed by what comes out of the first activity as well. So through this activity, we hope to address some of the major online risks in a way which either demonstrates to parents in the room that children are, for the most part, actually aware of risk and have their own strategies for managing risk. Alternatively, it will start the conversation about online risk between children and their parents and provide an important opportunity for parents to make themselves available to their children on an ongoing basis to help them to actually manage some of these risks together. And facilitators can encourage parents and their children to reach an agreement about how online risks will be managed as part of this activity. So we'll complete all of those story stems. They'll be colour-coded, so we'll know what comes from the children, we know what comes from the parents. Another activity will involve issue mapping and conflict resolution. Again, using the post-it notes, which again will be colour-coded, which we'll collect at the end. We'll ask parents and children to compile a list of the main sources of technology-related conflict at home. As a group, we'll brainstorm strategies for resolving some of these conflicts. We don't anticipate that we're going to be able to solve all of their problems then and there in a 2-hour workshop, but it's about starting the conversation. We can introduce the idea of a family technology agreement that parents can work on with their children at home if it's something that they think will be useful for them. At the end of the workshop, participants will be asked to complete an evaluation of the workshop and will also be invited to participate in follow-up focus groups and interviews. Those focus groups and interviews will be held several weeks after the workshops so that we can see what's changed in the time, if they're doing anything differently at home as a result. And we will obviously transcribe those interviews and workshops, which will form part of our data for this research project. We're also going to use an observer who'll write down their main observations from the workshops, and we'll be having a debrief at the end of each workshop, and we will record that. So that will be a debrief just with the project staff and the facilitators that have been there, so that we hope that through these activities and these various ways of recording and collecting data, we'll have enough rich data which will not only inform ongoing research and enable us to generate journal articles and other scholarly outputs, but also to thoroughly evaluate the project. So we're also developing a project website that will be used as an information portal for participants. It's not quite ready yet. And as part of the project, we're also developing a range of resources that will be made available. So they'll include sort of some fact sheets or information sheets, something that the participants can take home with them after the workshop. And those will be available on an ongoing basis as well, more broadly than just to those people that have attended the workshops as well. So I'm going to hand over to Sue now, who's going to talk a little bit more about some of those aspects of the project.
Thanks, Kat. So we've built the framework for the project website and we've started to begin to populate it with content. So the website, the purpose of the website, it gives us somewhere to put all the resources we're developing as part of the project. So following the presentations and workshops, participants can go online and download the material for use at home. It also gives us somewhere to provide up-to-date news and information about the project, and also where people can go to sign up for the family workshops. It provides a space for links to our community partners and other relevant sites, such as the eSafety Commissioner, and it gives us evaluation data around which resources or links visitors to the site are accessing. As Kat said, we're still in the early stages of designing the site and plan to launch it around April prior to the school presentations beginning. The online resources that we're developing will be co-designed with project team members and invited participants and will be tested and iterated as the project progresses. We want these materials to be practical and easy to use and complementary to the existing material available on the eSafety website. I'm just going to run through the benefits and impacts of the project. Firstly, I must apologise for way too many words on this slide. I've done the HDR training, which says there's an optimum number of words on a slide, 6 words across and 6 lines down, and this slide completely fails. When we worked through the project logic for this project with our community services partners, we looked at the high-level aims first. As Kat mentioned earlier, the aims are to promote intergenerational understanding of digital media use to reduce family conflict and to assist families to maximise the opportunities of digital media while minimising the risk to their children. So what does this mean? We looked at the benefits, what they would be to each of our stakeholder groups if we're successful. So children will feel that their parents understand the importance of their online life and their capabilities will be enhanced to manage their digital media use in a way that reduces risk. Families will be able to reduce conflict around digital media use at home, and parents will have an increased capability to leverage opportunities and reduce risk around digital media use within the family. Child, family and family-friendly online and hard copy resources will be available, which will complement the presentation and workshop learnings. For our community services partners, this project will increase their knowledge about online safety and the main issues related to digital media use in families, which they can use to enhance their existing programs. Our youth facilitators will gain skills and experience in presentation and facilitation, participate in a cross-disciplinary project with multiple partners and make worthwhile connections across UC, the community and schools. So a little bit more about our youth facilitators. This is a key component of our project. No matter how hard I try, I can't be anything but a middle-aged mum with a teenager at home. And as such, I have absolutely no street cred with any of the young people that we're aiming to reach in these sessions. So we put out the call prior to Christmas and have identified 6 young people who are keen to be involved in the project and that we feel have the skills and attributes. 4 young women and 2 young men. They come from the Faculty of Arts and Design and Communications and from the Faculty of Education. And all of them have a range of experiences in community services, retail, volunteer work, as well as their studies. They're all incredibly articulate and passionate young people who will be a great addition to our project. We'll be running them through some training sessions just to learn some basic facilitation skills, and then we'll be giving them the opportunity to practice their new skills before having to present in front of the school students and their families. They'll be asked to help assist in the delivery of both the school presentations and the family workshops. They won't be asked to run them by themselves, but will co-facilitate with an experienced member of the project team. They'll also participate in all the evaluation activities during the course of the project. We'll get their input into the design of the materials, the workshops, resources, just to assist in pitching the content in the right way. The purpose of ongoing evaluation is to evaluate and iterate the activities as we go. I'll talk a little bit more evaluation in a minute. So, something else exciting about this project has been reaching out to other parts of UC. So Kat has built a very strong core project team. So the core project team, including our community services partners, has considerable skills and experience in research, deep subject matter expertise, evaluation, facilitation, project management, community engagement and service delivery. However, we also recognised how valuable it would be to have some help around aligning what we're doing with the national education curriculum, testing our assumptions with people experienced at teaching and engaging with the cohort we are trying to reach, guidance around what kind of materials would be useful to teachers and students and how to pitch our approaches. So we reached out to Elka Stracker in the Faculty of Education and she was fantastic and we received very positive interest. She put a call out in the Faculty of Education. So we've now got on board a staff member, Megan Watts, who is an experienced high school teacher and who is president of Diversity ACT as well. Her assistance will be invaluable in reaching out to her network, as well as reviewing and providing feedback on our approach and materials. Also out of the blue, Kat received a call from an e-safety officer with the ACT Education Directorate, who also happens to be completing her Masters of Education at UC. So ticking all the boxes. We're also designing hard copy material for parents to take away from the workshops, the online repository for participants to access afterwards. Visual design skills is not something we have in huge supply in our team. So we reached out to Fanky Peng in the School of Design here and had a chat about how her students might help us. So there just happens to be a project unit within the Master of Design Strategies course around design thinking and co-design. I know because I did the unit as part of my Masters. So we're planning to pitch our design brief to the students this week and offer them the opportunity to come and work with our team to engage with the development phase in first semester and help us design our website and materials, and they will receive credit for the unit. So there are substantial benefits to UC and to the E-Safety Commissioner as the funding body. So UC, a multifaceted project that delivers positive impact to the Canberra community through the school presentations, the family workshops and complementary resources. Also substantial rich data to publish a report on the project and academic outputs such as journal articles. For e-safety, they get a pilot project that is iterated and evaluated with the potential to be further developed and rolled out more broadly within the ACT region and nationally, and aligned with the national curriculum and looking amazing. A bit about evaluation of the project. So we'll be collecting data for evaluation throughout the project, and Yunmo is driving the evaluation phase. So he's the one who's developed the evaluation plan and all the materials for doing this. We'll be doing, for example, activities during the workshops, paper-based surveys, observers in the workshops, debrief sessions, focus groups, monitoring news media, and auditing the data from the website. So we'll be using the data we collect along the way to iterate and refresh the activities and materials we use in the presentation to inform the final report. So the project timeline. The project kicked off in September last year and the core project team met twice before the end of the year. We used these meetings to get to know each other and plan how we would work together to make the project a success. We recruited 6 schools across Canberra with a mix of public and private, primary and high school, and geographically dispersed. In relation to the facilitators, we have our first training session. We'll have our first training session before the middle of March. We've done a lot of design work on the family workshops and have started on the school presentations and complementary materials. This work will be our focus until late May, when we will start to roll out the school presentations after NAPLAN. The family workshops will begin shortly thereafter. Project evaluation and the final report will be done, started in term 4 and be completed early next year. Thanks.
And if you know of anyone that you think might benefit from participating in a workshop, please give them our contact details, because we will be recruiting for the family workshops. So the project website should be up and running, in the next few weeks, and you'll have information on there and times and so on. So that's it. Questions? Thank you. Glenn, you have a question. You'll always have a question. Yeah, hello.
Just in terms of the interview process you're describing, so the families take part in the session, the training element of that, with the workshops, but then with the research process, I guess, is there like a kind of feedback mechanism back to the parents or back to the family?
Well, like thinking about it in terms of it being a research project where we'll need to get people to sign participant, the consent forms, we can then feed back a summary of the project to families, or maybe they can sign up. We haven't really thought this through, but maybe they can sign up to a mailing list where we can, disseminate, relevant information about what we found and resources and that sort of thing.
And a couple of the schools have actually indicated they'd be keen for us to come back and do something to their teachers, like a bit of a wrap up to their teachers about the project.
But I was just thinking, like, if they're part of the benefit parents and families and the kids that get to think through those, what are they called, the kind of story stuff?
The story stems, yeah.
We've be to kind of synthesize some of those responses, and then you can locate their individual response. So,
Yeah.
just things like that, so that they can, think about how they are individuals and their own kind of circumstances, while at the same time to the challenges that everyone faces.
Well, we're hoping, the way that we're hoping to conduct the workshops is doing it sort of collectively, where people will be providing their own individual responses, but rather than workshopping it with that particular individual, is that they get collated and they get discussed collectively as a whole. We want to kind of depersonalize it. We don't want fights breaking out between parents and their children, or people getting defensive about what they've put down. So even though we do ask everyone to provide various responses, they kind of get treated as a collective. So we're hoping that we get enough of the kind of critical mass in the workshops where participants can actually see kind of where they're situated within that context, and that their concerns are similar to others, and so on. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really interesting project, and I'm kind of interested in the sort of infrastructure aspect of it. Like, you're doing it with community services, doing it in schools, but also working with education people. And there's an affiliated schools program at UC. So I'm just wondering how you conceptualize it in terms of where it fits in. Like, is it going to benefit schools directly, or is it an external resource that you're kind of offering? You know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying.
How it fits in with what's going on.
Yeah, so we have been made aware of the affiliated schools program. We were made aware of this through our discussions with the people in the education faculty. And I am also aware, because I'm working on an application on another project which involves working with schools. So I'm also aware that when you do research with schools, there are actually now all these processes around, they have their own ethics considerations, and you need to go through the ACT Education Directorate rather than going to schools directly. The way that we see the school presentations, we don't see that as forming part of the research project. We see that more as being engagement. So we see that as, and as as I said in the presentation, the family workshops in our minds, I think, really are the kind of key component of this, where we're going to generate a lot of the data. But the school presentations was a way for us to demonstrate impact, because we can reach a lot more people by going into schools, as a way of recruiting people, but also giving something to schools, and also engaging with teachers. So it's kind of like we're actually just doing the ethics application, and we've just sort of been thinking through these issues around how do we factor in the school presentations in terms of ethics, because we don't want to have to get everyone's consent from all the students, because that involves, so we're not seeing that as part of like the research at all. That's engagement. That's us going into schools to actually give something to schools and working with the schools to work out what their issues are. And we've already had correspondence with the schools around, well, what are the key issues that you're dealing with? So that's more of an engagement exercise.
How did you do that?
So we use, that's a lot of that is being facilitated through the community partners who have really close working relationships with the schools. So that's, but the other point I think to make is that it's a pilot project that will be then reported back to the e-safety commissioner, and so it will really be then, if it is successful, it will be scaled up, and there'll be decisions made about how it will be rolled out in a more sort of or official way.
And just on top of that, I think too, engaging with the schools and the education faculty, just to ensure that the materials and stuff that we're creating are actually aligned with the curriculum that's already there. We've been talking to the schools about where they would see it fitting within their school streams, and talking to them too about what kind of materials are useful for the teachers makes it much easier for them to scale it up and go, yep, teachers love getting a packet of things that says this is an hour session to run on this, and here's all your material and here's how you do it. So if we can create something that then makes it easier for it to be scaled up, it's a bit of a value add thing.
But we've also had to think through how do we kind of evaluate that part of the project, and thinking that, well, we're not gathering data on the students, but we're working with the teachers, and we can get them to sign a consent form so they can feed back to us how things went down, what worked, what didn't. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I just want to follow up on media literacy, which you mentioned, but you didn't talk about it.
No. We're actually we've worked out the content for the family workshops, because all that has to go to the ethics committee. The school presentations is our next thing that we're going to be working through. So we're still in the planning phase of the project. So what I put on the slide there, they're the very broad ideas. Yunmo's been reviewing some of the literature. We've got notes, we've got ideas. We just haven't put it together in any kind of formal presentation yet. So we've got a project meeting on the 15th of March with some of these people in education, with the whole project team, to actually work through what we're going to cover. But yes, I think it needs to be more of that broader focus on media literacy, noting that I think they do some of that kind of stuff that in schools already, and balanced use and well-being and respectful relationships, rather than don't post photos in your school uniform and don't talk to strangers online and don't send nudes and so on, all the risk stuff. Yeah, but we'll have more detail on all of that in the coming weeks. Yeah.
Hi there, my name is Danish and I study public health. I also teach public health research and evaluation. I wanted to congratulate you on a really very exciting intervention and a really impressive evaluation design. So there's so much scope within it to reach children and also young people and talk about digital well-being. So in terms of the focus, it's not essentially reducing the amount of screen time, but it's making them more informed, balanced users of digital media in terms of what the benefits are and what the harms are.
Yeah.
But not as much about shifting behaviors away.
No, we want to try and avoid the discourse around these sort of definitive answers about, well, your child should only have this many hours of screen time a day, or your child shouldn't be on social media until they're 13, or those. And it's hard because I know a lot of parents want those. They want the answers. They want to know, and we fully anticipate that we're going to get parents that come along and they'll just say, look, how many hours a day should my child be on a screen? And they want social media. Should I give it to them? That they're going to want those sorts of answers. But we're going to say at the beginning of these workshops that there is not this kind of easy one-size-fits-all approach, that just focusing on numbers with screen time doesn't account for all of the different things that you can do online, some of which may have more value than others, and just kind of setting those expectations, which might be a little bit disappointing for parents. But I hope that by the end of it, they actually get a little bit more of an appreciation that thinking beyond just the kind of panic headlines that you get about media use, or that parents should be doing this and they should be restricting screen time, they should be taking devices away and so on. And hopefully we give parents a little bit more confidence and alleviate their kind of stress and anxiety a little bit by, I think, avoiding those particular narratives. Because, I mean, the advice around screen time has changed. You're probably aware it's changed. It used to be the American Association of Pediatrics 2x2 rule that, your child should not have more than 2 hours of screen time a day if they're more than 2, and if they're less than 2, they shouldn't have any, and, all sorts of things that have since sort of been abandoned, I think, in recognition of all of the ways that young people use media. And that just kind of putting that blanket number on it is really actually not that helpful.
And also not how families use media, making this not about just children's behaviour, but families' setting and negotiation may also be revealed some parents.
I just thought I'd see if there's anyone posting any questions online, but I'm not. More. Chat. Thank you. Thanks. Thanks, Bethany. Thanks, Abu.
Challenging question.
Someone's got your microphone on.
Yeah.
Hi, Peter. I have a question.
Hello, go ahead. Disembodied.
Yeah, I am working in this is Abu Barkat here. I'm working in the
hi.
IT and systems area. And I'm just wondering whether you are focusing on creating new technical instruction or guideline for the teachers as well, or you'll be focusing on the existing materials and then more focusing on the other side, like how they behave, what is the success?
Sorry, I missed part of that. Are we focused? It was sort of a technical question about the technical systems, was it? Sorry.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking of like, you know, the cybersecurity challenges are evolving every day. There are a lot of new stuff coming in. So will you be focusing, creating some new learning materials for the teaching team based on the technical issues?
Look, I mean, I think that's an excellent question. And I think that's just one of the kind of perennial challenges when you're looking at the risks in the online environment, is that it rapidly changes and that you get new platforms and apps and that create new risks and all sorts of things. It's sort of like, how can you stay on top of these things? So I think the short answer to your question is no, that we're going to be instead looking at the broader skills around navigating safe use, regardless of sort of whatever platform or device is being used. Anyone else have anything to add on that?
Again, I think that would be probably something that the Safety Commissioner could take the project or the project findings, but it's not in the scope of what we're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. But if you need any help, I'm just in building 6. We can have a coffee and chat.
Thank you.
No
Thank you
worries.
so much. Thank you, Abu. That's great.
We might end up with all of the faculty
Gosh.
involved.
A great start. Thank you.
Thank you.
Follow on to the thought. The thought is the intervention also has the capacity done early with children. Sorry, I'm just sharing the thought. So because it's a valuable behavior change intervention in a way as such, are there any thoughts about looking at the outcomes in terms of when the intervention is done amongst children that are really young in your cohort, to see whether conflict changes in those families later on? In that sense, it becomes a second intervention on its own, which not only assesses digital media consumption, but also influences subsequent digital media use in later years, because you're specifically tailored a younger cohort.
Yeah, that's thanks for sharing those thoughts. I think at this point it's beyond the scope. Moshe's nodding, who's done our whole evaluation. We've talked quite a bit about the best way to do this evaluation, and I think that we're keeping it reasonably simple. And in terms of looking at very young children, the youngest that we're going is actually grade 5. So we're looking at the upper primary and then into high school. And obviously we're even going to have to tailor the content to those specific audiences. But yes, I mean, of course, people younger than that do use media, I guess, and it can create all sorts of parenting problems. I think our rationale for looking at the older children is that in terms of my research and sort of research that we've engaged with, is that it becomes sort of particularly thorny for parents when the children are older, because you cannot simply take a device away, which you can probably with a 7-year-old. You can just take a device away. But once you've got sort of, children that are 11 plus, they're a lot more savvy. They're a lot less kind of amenable to being kind of governed in that kind of way. So that's, in our experience, and you know, looking at the research, that's where a lot of the family conflict really sort of starts to create issues. Yeah. Yunmo, did you have anything to add on that?
I mean, so, as you mentioned, I think we are not deciding yet. I mean, so we are not considering breaking down age groups. So the primary objective of this project will be exploring ways in which we can minimize family conflict around media use. So that way, I think we can focus on age 10 to 12 or 9 to 12. So as Kat and Sue mentioned, this is kind of pilot study, so I think that we can expand that scope. But at this stage, when I'm considering working on that.
Although I do expect we'll get different experiences with upper high school and college. We're going to college?
No,
year 10.
Year 10.
But I think the difference between upper primary school and upper high school will look quite different experiences.
That's it, isn't it? Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your great questions. Thanks for listening.